pass that. With that, I'll pass it over to you, Kevin.
Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see folks coming out for such an interesting topic of planned giving. And welcome to Catherine Smith from ELFEC, Evangelical Lutheran Foundation of Eastern Canada. Did I get that correct? All right, very good. But I know you've branched out into other synods as well, and not just in Eastern Canada. So great to have you with us today and talking about planned giving. ELFEC has been a very useful, valuable resource for us as Resource Generation Task Force that I serve as chair, and Myron is on that task force as well. So good to see Myron on this call. So welcome everyone. We'll start together with a word of prayer. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks that you have gathered us here in your name. We pray that as we hear and learn from you, that you would open our hearts, open our eyes, open our minds, open our spirits, and bless Catherine as she presents to us today. Fill her with the power of Jesus and his resurrection to share faithfully and fruitfully. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So I'll turn it over to Catherine. She'll share for about 20 minutes and then we'll have a Q&A. So welcome, Catherine.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Prima, and the rest of you for having me here today. I am going to just bring up my share screen. Prima and I practiced this, so hopefully it all works the way it's supposed to. So what I'm going to be doing today is talking about Planned Giving 101, how you can make a difference. So this is a real going to be a high level part of planned giving. What we can cover in 20 minutes does only start scratching the surface. And I wanted to give a few other details too. As Kevin had mentioned, that ELFEC is started in the Eastern Synod, but has spread across Canada. So I want to give you a little bit of background about ELFEC as well. So my official title is Catherine Smith, is Giving Advisor. And what does that mean and who am I? So just a little bit of a brief description of who I am. My background actually is from, I spent a good number of my early years in Alberta. My father was a Lutheran pastor serving at Shepherd of the Hills in Calgary and also at Mount Zion in Edmonton. So it wasn't until, and I actually then went to Camrose Lutheran College as well, when it was still Camrose Lutheran College, and where I met my then, I guess, boyfriend, now husband, and he was from out here in Ontario. So after we were married, we moved out to Ontario, and I've been out here ever since. But still, Alberta holds a great deal of love for me. So it's lovely for me to be here with you today doing that. So a giving advisor, they go by different names. That's the title they've given me with ELFEC. But what we do is we help people who want to leave gifts to the church to talk through some of the options. What are some of the things that they're interested in? Prepare them, give them, help them finalize a few things so that when they go talk to their lawyer or their financial advisor, they already have some ideas of what they'd like to do. We don't give that legal or professional advice. We do need to leave that for the professionals, but sometimes it's just really good to talk to somebody about what some of the questions you might have, that so that you feel prepared when you are ready to make those decisions. We also work with the synods, the national church, Canadian Lutheran World Relief, congregations, individuals, just going through talking about, so for an example, somebody wanting to leave a gift to Martin Luther University College, they might call me and say, and then I would be the in-between between those two so that I can help them do this. What I do is free. It's free to the individuals, to the synods, to everything. It's covered by the investments that ELFEC makes. And so it's a great way to get some advice and talk to somebody who cares about the church and cares about what is important to you as well. So this is a little bit of what we're going to go through today. What is ELFEC? What is planned giving? An intro to bequests and charitable gifts, donations of securities, some steps that congregations might take, and then we'll have time for a Q&A. So you see, I'm covering a lot of stuff in this few minutes. I said it's a real high-level overview, but kind of gives you an idea of what ELFEC and the different things that we can do, and that where I can possibly assist you in the future too. So ELFEC, it's a charitable foundation. It's registered with the CRA and we're federally incorporated. We have to follow the same rules that your congregation does or the synod does as a charitable organization. We file the same sort of reports. Yes, there's a few differences between a foundation and a congregation, but those are minor, but we are a charity and we need to follow all those same rules. We are handle investments, and we now have we're a medium-sized investor, and we now have assets over 60,000 or $60 million. And so that's kind of, oops, I didn't mean to do that, but that's okay. And we work with, like I said, congregations and synods across this country. So what do we do? There's three main branches that ELFEC handles. We help churches and people give generously by growing income through responsible investing. So what's responsible investing? That's making sure that the funds that you entrust to us are being used for, are not being used in situations that might feel uncomfortable for the church to be involved in. And we try to look for ways that we can get good returns while still investing in things that are important to the mission of the church. We empower, this is what I do, we empower people to make gifts to the church, and we help answer questions around that and help them to know how to do that. We help congregations manage and grow their investments. And we also give grant money to Lutheran charities. So congregations have the opportunity to apply for funds to do different things. So sometimes it was, for example, a congregation who was switching out their all of their light fixtures in their church to LED fixtures, and we provided some grant money for that. Or for a congregation who is looking to do low flush toilets, or for another congregation who's looking at starting up a food services distribution center. So these are the type of things that we would be granting to. We have a number of partners, and you'll see some of them here. And these are all people that have investments that ELFEC is handling the investments for. So you see that we are from across the country, and there's 2 Lutheran congregations from Alberta involved with the over 40 that we currently have. So we really are looking at how can you have more money for the ministries that your congregation or that you are interested in. So I do want to go back to just cover, we do call ourselves ELFEC now more than the Evangelical Lutheran. The official legal name is the Evangelical Lutheran Foundation of Eastern Canada. That it comes from our history. We did start in the Eastern Synod, and but that was kind of it, that came through a motion from the Eastern Synod to have a place where they could do their investments. The foundation was formed, but then other congregations and other synods wanted to be a part of this too. And so we have expanded. So right now we just normally call ourselves ELFEC, and I just wanted to kind of put that out in the open. It's the elephant in the room. Everybody sees that Eastern Canada and think, oh, it's only for people out there. It's not only for people. We really have embracing the entire country now. And as you saw from that previous slide. So what is planned giving? Planned giving is a gift or a donation or a legacy gift that you make through your will or through another formal designation. This can also be known as legacy giving. So you may have heard the term planned giving, you may have heard the term legacy giving. They're really the same thing. And it's what I do, and it is really my ministry to the church, is that I believe in the mission of the church, and I believe in what the church is doing in the world, that a planned gift offers people the opportunity to be part of that mission. It's part of our generous giving. It's part of, it's our ministry to the church. And this is just the way that we have been called to be disciples in the world. And this is one of those ways that we can share our discipleship with the world, is by leaving a gift to the church as a planned gift. So out of our estate after we have died, is that our giving can continue. So leaving a gift to the church or the synod or the national church or LTS or Canadian Lutheran World Relief or any of those other places that we consider as part of the wider church, that can be done through a will. And it's also done as part of your financial and your tax planning. I like people to think about, what have you lived for? What is it that's been important in your life? And that becomes, you can continue doing that as part of your legacy. And we'll get into a few stories in a few minutes, and you'll see how other people have done that. And my screen won't, there we go. So why leave a legacy gift? Well, we've talked on that a little bit already. We do know that hundreds of Lutherans have already left a gift in their will for the benefit of the church. And I know that because I send out all the Christmas cards and the thank you cards, and I know how many people I have that I'm sending these out to. So this is not just some pie in the sky number. And this is only a small percentage of the people who have actually identified themselves to ELFEC as leaving a gift in their will to their church. Why do they do it? Well, they do it, and it's because of God's constant presence in their lives. God has been there in the good times and in the bad times, been there in the births, the confirmations, the marriages, the deaths. The church has been there through the ministers, through their friends, through their Sunday worship services. And they've also seen the church out in the community, doing the outreach, feeding the hungry, making sure that people have homes to live in, making sure they have affordable homes, offering teaching in their basements for people who are new refugees, taking in people who are newcomers to this country. And they say, you know what, this is something I can really get behind. This is something I believe in. The church has been there for me. I see the church being there for others. And I want to make sure that that continues for now and for in the future, for my children, their children, for the other people in this world, for all of those who are marginalized, that they all have a place at the table. The church's future. I know I'm part of the conversations. I see it in front of me. I know that people are concerned, but my church isn't going to be here in 5 years. Well, I have to say, I'm one of those ones that's not on that side of the fence. I'm on the other side of the fence saying that I'm not sure your church in the way that it looks right now is going to be here, but the church, the Lutheran church, the Christian church, God's church is going to be here. There's always going to be people who have a need, and that this is one way I do feel that our synods and our national church really look at all of these things and make decisions, and there is a future. It may not look like we have it today. It may not look like it was 40 years ago. I know it won't. But yes, there is a future, and I want to be part of that. I want to make sure that my children and my grandchildren have a world that cares about other people, that has a place in this world. And that's what, so I think the church's future. I think that's really why a lot of people will leave a legacy gift. People also leave a legacy gift because of gratitude and generosity. They are, as I mentioned, the church has been there and they want to give back. It's their way of saying, God has been generous to me, and with that generosity, I give back. So part of this is the congregation, is that making sure that we invite people to be part of the story. People want something to support. They want a reason to support. And so that sharing the story is part of the mission and vision of the church. So I'd like to share just a few of these stories with you. And these are real people that have really left gifts to the church, but their names are not the real people or their names. So Ed and Shirley have been married for a long, long time. They have made their gifts in their wills. And the way that they made these gifts is that they used what we call mere wills, is that they both left. If one should die, everything goes to the other, and vice versa. But they named their congregation as their beneficiary after both of them have died. This is the most common scenario. People don't know how much money, and I would be the same way, don't know how much money you need while you're still alive. And it's like, well, I don't know how much I can give at the end, and I need to make sure that my spouse is cared for, and that's what we're called to do. We're called to care for each other. Those are some of the commitments we've made. But after we're both gone, maybe there's somebody else who can use some of that money. And so you name the congregation as your beneficiary. That way you have the money you need while you're still alive. And it's only after you're gone, when you don't need that money more, that it gets distributed from your estate. Now, there's a lot of different ways of going here. And so I'm going to quickly go through these. Each one of these options I'm giving you could be a full 5-10 minute discussion itself. But I'm just going to give you a few of the options that people use to kind of get your imagination going about how a planned gift might look in your context. Some people tithe their estate so that they've gotten used to tithing throughout their life. And so even in their death, they're going to continue tithing. 10% goes to the charity of their choice. Some people endow their pledge. They know that they give a lot to their church and that they're one of the reasons their church actually is able to keep afloat. I mean, I hope I'm talking here to people who are involved in finances and stuff here and probably know some of this. So they're concerned that when they die, actually that's going to really harm their church financially. And so they'll look at saying, well, what can I do to make sure that that is minimized? So endowing the pledges. So I'll just use very simple so we can all do the math here. Let's say that you normally give $1,000 a year. And I mean, I'm not saying $1,000 a year to your congregation. So to endow the pledge, you might give $25,000 in your will to the church. The income from that church would support that $1,000 over the next several years. And that would give your church the time to rebalance after that and make other plans. But so that's one of ways of endowing the pledge. Some people adopt the church, and this has become more popular, is that you have 2 children. And so you divide your estate into 3, one part for each child, and the third part goes to your church. And so that you've adopted the church as one of your children in theory, and that so you divide your estate up in equal portions to the different places that you want to support. When Ed and Shirley did up their will, they gave it to a general purpose, and they just had it go to their congregation to be used for whatever the congregation needed it for. And that is by far the most common. And it's really good for a congregation to be able to know that they can use the money in that way. But some people would prefer to get a little bit more specific. I always caution people on this. The more specific you are, it might be the harder it is for the church to actually use your gift. So if you say it's to replace all the pipes in the pipe, or to replace pipes in the pipe organ, and your church no longer has a pipe organ, that gift can't be used. It has to go through a number of legal battles to be able to actually access those funds. But if you might say it's to for the worship, that's general enough and gives the congregation enough leeway to be able to use it for a number of different things. So just giving a little bit of a warning here about the specific ones, and making sure it's not too specific that you tie people's hands in a way that you did not intend to tie them. Marlene is single, and both her parents are gone. She has no close family members, and yet she's worked her entire life, and she has quite a nice little nest egg, which she knows she's very grateful for, but she's not sure. She knows that when she's gone, what is she going to do with those funds? She doesn't have anybody to leave it to. So this can be both mean, it's a gift. It can also be, I mean, for her, it could be sad, but what she's decided to do with this gift that she's been given throughout her lifetime is to support the wider church. She wants to be remembered for what was important during her life. So Marlene is a nurse. And one of the things that she has done over the years is traveled over to Israel and specifically Jerusalem, and she volunteers at Augusta Victoria Hospital. And that has just become something that she has loved to do. So what she has done in her will is she's leaving a significant gift in her will and setting up a donor advised fund. And a donor advised fund, she has indicated when she dies and that gift comes, that a scholarship will be set up to support nursing students at Augusta Victoria Hospital. So here it is, something that is so important to her in her life, both her nursing and working at Augusta and volunteering at Augusta Victoria. She's been able to combine those two things in her will with a gift to setting up a donor advised fund. Now, there is different ways of setting up donor advised funds. She has set hers up so that in 20 years, everything will be spent so that that gift will last for the next 20 years, helping students at going into nursing at Augusta Victoria Hospital. One other thing I'd just like to mention is because it can be this time of year where a lot of people are talking about making year-end donations, but this is donations of securities. It's one of the places where the Canadian government is very generous in supporting when people make a donation to a charity with their gift of securities. Gift of securities can be done now. So you can do that on a regular annual basis to your congregation, or you can say it's something that I want to do in my will. There's tax advantages to leaving gifts of securities if there's been a capital gains tax. So for an example, you bought a security, it was $100, it's now worth $400. If you sell that, there's a capital gains of $300 on that, and that $300 is taxable. 50% of that gain is taxable. But if you were to take that instead and donate it to a charity, actually there's no tax payable on it. So both your charity gets more because you haven't cashed out and are only giving them what's left over, plus you are paying less taxes. So it's really a win-win, and it's worth something to look into if you have securities. And it's one way that people are finding that they're able to make gifts to their congregations on an annual basis. So instead of writing a check or doing the pad every week, they'll do a larger gift once a year, or in addition to their regular giving. It's a way to give a gift. As I mentioned, you do get a donation receipt, and it actually can help reduce the income tax in the year of death too, which leaves more to your other beneficiaries. The reason I'm bringing this up is that ELFEC can assist in the transfer of funds to a charity. Most churches are not set up to accept gifts of securities, but ELFEC does do this. This is one of the programs that we do offer to the wider church, so that people who want to take advantage of this can do that. And we do find every year that there's more and more people, as they're learning the advantages, especially, I will say, especially for the tax advantages, are using that as one of the ways to do their financial planning for the year. Just a heads up that the year-end cutoff date to make sure that you do get that receipt in 2021 is December 17th. We will take gifts after that. We'll do our best to get them processed by the end of the year, but to guarantee that you would get your tax receipt by the end of the year is December 17th. I also wanted to touch a little bit. So we've talked about what ELFEC is, what planned giving is, and why people might want to make a planned gift. But I think we probably have some congregational members on here who are interested. Well, what about my congregation? Can I set up a planned giving program in my congregation? Why would I want to set one up? So I did want to talk a little bit just again about planned giving and your congregation. So there's I think it's important to realize that this is not, I'm going to set up a planned giving program and it's going to solve all my problems tomorrow. Planned giving is a long-term investment that people are making plans today and writing things in their will, but they might be around for another 20, 30, even 40 years. So you're not seeing those funds right away. There may be some people, but most people are probably doing it. They do it at major life events. They write their wills at the time of the birth of a child, when they get married, when they buy their first house, when a spouse dies. So at those times when they're looking at their will and they're thinking, okay, I'm ready to write something into my will, there's still a number of years before you're going to start seeing that. But without offering it, you're not going to see anything ever. I mean, well, I shouldn't say ever. There will be some people who will do it even without you saying anything. But one of the things that you are doing is that you are preparing a way for people to help them make that decision. For all of those things that we talked about earlier, the generosity, the gratitude, the mission of the church. So some things, if you are in that place, is to think about at this point, why do you want people to give? So the primary reason that people give is because they believe in the mission of the church, which also includes the mission of your congregation. So what is it that your church is doing that would make people want to give to it? You need to have vivid and compelling reasons for that. And that may come as you continue on conversations. That shouldn't make you stop setting something up, but it's something to dream about and to think about. And one of the questions I like to ask, what would you do if somebody just donated $100,000 to your church? What would you do? But also, how would you answer that question if somebody says, if I were to leave you $100,000, what would you do with it? And that's what I said. You need to have those gift guidelines, have some ideas of what it is that's important in your church, in your context. And that's only something that you can do as a congregation. It's I think we've really learned through COVID, sorry to bring that up, but during COVID, that each congregation has found their own unique purpose within their community. So what is happening at, and I'll just say Mount Zion in Edmonton is not the same as Faith Lutheran down in Calgary, is not the same as some little, one of the congregations in Balfour or in Airdrie or in Sundre or wherever Olds, they all have found their own way that they need to connect with their community. I just was talking with a friend of mine here, but her congregation is going through looking at what does the future hold for them right now. And she says, one of the things that has been really interesting is that a few years ago when they started this conversation, everybody's saying, we've got to have the church, got to have the church. We've had this building, we've been at this place forever and ever and ever, got to have the church. What they discovered through COVID is that they still were a church, even if they were meeting online. They were still a community of caring, even when they were meeting over Zoom. And all of a sudden, that building was not the most important thing to them anymore. There was a community that they continued to support outside of those walls, and that became their identity more than the four walls. And that's why I'm saying every church has to figure out for themselves, what are those vivid and compelling reasons, what it is that who are you in your community, and that those are the stories, and that's what you need to do so that you know why you're setting up a program. As leaders in the congregation, have you remembered the church in your will, and are you willing to do so? It's kind of one of those things of, if I'm not willing to say, yes, this is important to me, and I'm going to show you how important it is to me, it's more difficult to ask people to follow in your footsteps. Speak about it. Can you put it into bulletin announcements? Can you let people know that you have a planned giving program, or that the church actually is happy to receive your gift in a will? The most common reason why people do not leave gifts in the will to their church is they didn't know they could. Nobody told them. And you are in competition with every other charity out there in Canada. They are all asking you for your money. They are all saying, Will you remember us in your will? Will you remember us with a monthly donation? And if you don't ask, someone else is going to ask them. So is it the church's responsibility? Yes. Actually, God was generous. God asked us to be generous. Jesus pointed out many times about how people were generous with their money. And this is a conversation. This is something that is talked about, and we can talk about it too. Provide information. So Kevin was just saying beforehand that they're talking about doing working with helping people with doing seminars on will writing or on funeral planning and stuff. That's providing information. It's letting people know what's out there, what you can do. Administration. So this is really important. Sometimes people want to leave a gift to the church, but nobody knows how to do it. Make sure that your administrative assistant knows what to do. Make sure they know what your CRA number is. Make sure they know who they need to contact, how the wording in the will might look. What's your official name of your congregation? Is it Faith Lutheran Church? Is it Faith Evangelical Lutheran Church in Calgary? Is it, and I'm running out of ideas here, but you get the idea here. I'm going to say it's, even the Alberta Synod, their website is Alberta Synod, but what's the official name of the Alberta Synod, and so make sure that the people who would get the questions know the answers to what's your CRA number, what's the wording that you would use, what's the legal name. You also, if a lawyer should call you and say, hey, somebody wants to leave a gift, you don't want them waiting 3 days for the answer. You want somebody to be able to give them the answer right away. So this information should be provided to those people who are front facing, with the treasurer, the administrative assistant, the pastor, anybody you think might get this question, make sure that they have it. The other part of administration is making sure that you have the ability to do the receipting properly. And I'm sure most of you do. I'm just pointing that out, that's one of the things that you need to make sure you do. And finally, thanking. Don't let those gifts go without a thank you note, and tell them how much their gift is appreciated, whether it's going to the person or to the executor of the estate or the family member. This is maybe one of the only times that you will get in touch with somebody, family member who's left a gift, and you've got to let them know how much it was appreciated and how that gift will be used. One of the things that ELFEC does is we support congregations in that. So when somebody lets us know that they've actually made a gift in their will, or they've done a donation of securities, we include them in our database. I know it sounds really official here, but we include them, and that we make regular contact with them by sending out birthday cards, Thanksgiving letter, Christmas cards. And we've now this past year started what we call the Giving Circle, where we are making people part of a community that is part of a community that believes in this generous giving to the church. So if you do have members in your congregation, and if you do know they've left a gift to the will, in their will, or to wider church, and if they have given you permission, either have them or for you to pass their names on to me, and we will add them to our list of people. And that way then they become, I don't know if they're spokespersons, but some of them definitely are spokesperson, but people become part of a community, and that widens that circle of influence of what's going on. So we do know there are people out there who have not made the choice not to identify themselves. And of course, that's absolutely fine. But we would love to be part of that community so that we can thank your donors, and that we can be part of letting them know what's going on as a continual stewardship, and thanking them for their gift. At this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. I guess I'll go into a gallery view. Just wait here. I got to see it. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and that way then I'll do there. But there's my contact information if anybody would like to get in touch with me.
Great, awesome. Thanks, Catherine, for that very thorough overview. Anyone have any questions for Catherine on what she presented?
Yeah, I wanted to comment, Myron here from Edmonton. Our congregation, Our Savior Lutheran Church, what we did in, I guess, 2020, we had an estate. It was $100,000 given to our congregation, and what council did, they decided to use the 10% tithing. Pastor Phil Penrod was involved in that, and we donated $10,000 to the Senate.
Mhm.
So with no restrictions, whatever, the Senate could do whatever they wanted with that. So I guess that's just an example of as congregations in the Senate and across Canada, as they're dealing with some of the stuff, to keep the Senate in mind. And that's one of the reasons I'm on the task force with Pastor Kevin and 3 others. But I just want to share that example, and I really think it's a matter of a great presentation, Catherine, once again. But just a matter of educating congregations what's out there and what things to think about, and that's what our task force is trying to do. So anyways, just
Myron,
wanted to
yeah, no, I think that's a really, really good idea. Tithing the tithe, or whatever, tithing it. And I know then in the Eastern Synod, they turn around and give 10% off to the national church, and the national church gives a portion off to Lutheran World Federation. So that gift continues to keep going and doesn't stop there. That's part of, as you're setting this up, is knowing how you're going to be using the gift. So if a family asks you, you can clearly state this is how the gift is going to be used. They can say something else, but sometimes people are like, well, I can't support everybody, but well, if I give to the church, I know what's going on, and that they're doing ministry in their own way too. So
and I think one of the guidelines Senate Bishop Larry has mentioned is maybe considering 1/3 to the Senate, 1/3 to a local, and then 1/3 to an international project as well. If congregations are looking for guidelines, if you will, that's a good way to share it. Yeah.
Yeah, those guidelines were from congregations who are closing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right.
Catherine, I had a question regarding the securities. Are you noticing an uptick in those sorts of donations? Because I've noticed a huge increase in those in terms of giving at my congregation. We have the apparatus to receive them. From your perspective, is that becoming more and more common as people are trying to offload their capital gains?
oh yeah, definitely becoming more common. And the reason I think is there's multiple reasons. One is that people are finally hearing about it, right? That we have a lot of charities that are that it's taken a while this has been around for a while, but it's taken a while for the engine to get going, for people to understand it. And as more people hear about it, the more it makes sense. We also have a whole generation that's starting to get older and realizing, actually, I have all these capital gains in these securities I've had for 30 or 40 years. And I am going to die, like it's coming, and there's a better use for me I can use those funds in a better way. And that, because there will be tax on those, and I can donate that and keep those funds that won't be taxed, that are in my TFSA or whatever, that aren't going to be taxed, then they can, it's just good financial planning. So yes, but I think that's a really good point. So definitely we've noticed an uptick. I'm glad to hear that you can receive them, Kevin. Not all congregations can. And I know there are other ones. I certainly know of other ones that have taken that step to be able to do that. So.
Yeah, we've noticed that people have reduced their PAR, their pre-authorized remittance, and replaced it with securities. And we found they're actually giving more when they give the securities rather than they were on PAR. So that was a positive outcome.
And I don't think I said it clearly enough, but if you have your PAR and you give on a regular basis, and all of a sudden you want to make that end of year gift, or you want as a special donation, then a gift of securities is also a great way to doing that without having to dig into your cash flow. It's like, it's something you've budgeted for your annual donations, but there is something important that the church is doing and you want to support that this is also one way that people can do it too. So over and above what you would be your regular giving. Yes.
Hi, I'm Phil Hulk at Lutheran Church of the Cross. Gates Forche is a member of my congregation, and we're listening from a little different view other than just the specific legacy giving, because we have a mission endowment fund that has just hit the minimum So we're getting ready to start dispensing and just, I guess I'd heard about ELFEC years ago, but didn't have enough understanding or awareness to pursue it. But we're asking questions as far as, being responsible for the types of investment or how we invest that money in order to, for the interest on the endowment. And so I think we're particularly listening as far as ELFEC as a resource in doing either responsible or faithful investing.
Right.
And so I'll just mention that and see what your response is, and then hopefully Gates is listening in and he'll have some follow-up questions.
Okay, so I will say that certainly is a reason that a lot of congregations do invest in ELFEC is because of that responsible investing, and we get good return rates. So we also have to, we work with an investment company and review who that's going to be every few years to make sure we're getting good service from them. And we also then have to make sure that our fiduciary responsibility is to make sure that we are handling those investments well for the people who've invested with us. And I would say that we have a good track record. That is not my expertise. That's not the part that I handle too much, but I certainly, if you wanted to send me, your information, Phil or Gates, and then I can pass it on to Lee Gould, who's our executive director, and they can be in touch with you and they would be able to answer a lot more of your questions specifically. I don't know if that helps at all, but we are very careful about how we invest. We work with a number of other companies that are Share is one of them, and looking at so that we can also receive guidance about and supporting these ones. Watchdog type companies to make sure that they are doing some of the work for us, because it's hard for us to do it all ourselves. But so we work with other communities in the same way. The other thing we do is what's called impact investing. So if you have small, I'm going to say small businesses, I guess is probably the right way of saying it, but that they're doing work in the community, but they need an influx of money. And then, but the influx of money, but there's a return on it. We call that impact investing to make sure that is happening. And that helps with being able to help with refurbishing a number of apartment buildings in Toronto to get better ventilation and using lower cost energy ways of doing that. I know there was a church that was doing some work out in BC that we were able to do that. And we're also looking at some agricultural type of things now too. So looking for that.
I think I do have a follow-up also. I know that like if I had members here, this would kind of be certainly the legacy giving seminar that you're providing. Is that a service that, like, if we wanted to have that a similar presentation in our congregation, can you provide that, or is it really more that kind of equipping us to have a presentation? Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. No, good question. So in the before times, that was one of the things I often did quite a bit, is I spent a lot of Sundays going to different congregations and doing a presentation and having one-on-one conversations with people. So that obviously stopped a few years ago. And this is actually the first presentation I've been able to do like this. ELFEC, along with a couple of Anglican dioceses, have sponsored a number of webinars over the last year. But actually, I'm looking forward to doing this. I was going to see how it worked. And so you can tell me whether it worked or not, but I'd be happy to come and visit through a Zoom call like this. Life being as it is, I hope I'm going to be out in Calgary at the National Assembly, but that might not be a good time for a presentation. But I do certainly that's one of the things I do, and then I customize it to your congregation, to your people.
And it sounds like there's also webinars, maybe recordings that are available, just that we could have sitting on the website for folks to get curious and maybe they can direct themselves to those, right? Okay. Right. Thank you. I actually have to leave for a second.
Any other questions for Catherine? It's all very, very, very thorough. Yeah.
Well, it's been great being here. I appreciate
Yeah,
that. I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate that. It feels good, you know, like it's scary when this is becoming the normal and you feel like I'm with you, right? You know, it's like, okay. So I'm glad to see. I'm hoping that you know, that any feedback is welcome, but also just wondering if this does seem like a good way of making a presentation to a congregation.
Yeah, yep. And Myron, you had something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for some of the people I mean, as a task force, we're trying to educate people around this. So I think this is a good presentation, whether it's recorded or live like this for the congregations. So I'm just curious, from some of those congregations, what would they, I think ELFEC's a great resource, but what are they looking at from, you know, from the Synod perspective? And maybe Pastor Prima could add to this, like, we're just trying to navigate our way through this. What more would you like to see to educate congregations, and how do we get the word out? There was emails that went out to all the congregations and to the treasurers about including the Synod in their, you know, in their budgeting process for 2022. But just wondering if anybody's comfortable speaking up, and Pastor Art's on there from Camp Curiosity as well. So if we have a little more time.
So Art, you're asking about a communications piece around the stuff, the planned giving stuff? Myron?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we do have that video coming out from the task force that's going to be distributed and circulated among congregations, and as well as we're looking at the other communications piece as well to get this information out. And so one of the questions I had follow-up with Catherine is, what would you see as next steps for us in terms of getting congregations in the Synod moving a more deliberate path forward with planned giving stuff? Would it be just a communications piece connecting with you, or just having a more robust gathering?
I think both of those. I think a gathering, trying to get, you know, some of the leaders or leaders. When I say leaders, I'm talking both ordained and non-ordained, whoever those church leaders are that are decision makers, maybe getting them together. I'm actually, that's one of my things, is working a little for 2022 is working through and getting more of a program together. So I think that there is some steps that people can, steps that people can do. So the first steps, obviously, for congregations are those things that I talked about, is just making sure you physically are able to do that. I also think making sure your website is clear to make sure that you will accept donations, but it has to start becoming part of our conversation, the same way that prayer becomes part of our conversation, the same way that singing hymns becomes part of our conversation, in that, and not to shy away from it. And so I think that that's where we want to be able to, with your resource group and with the help of the Synod in other ways, is to let's start making this part of the conversation, and let's show. And those, part of that is gathering those stories. So I know that your video was a couple of stories. That's really important, is gathering the stories. If people can see themselves in the story, to know that. As I said, there's a long-term investment in here. It's not an immediate investment. But the other thing too is, I just heard of statistics this week. It takes like 15, at minimum of 15 touch points average for people to make that decision to leave a gift in their will. So here's touch point 1 for you guys. And there's only like 8 of us, right? Well, you've got a lot of people in your Synod, that it's a lot more touch points. And so those touch points have to be regular, and they have to be well thought out of. So I think you start developing that plan. What is our plan, and how do we go forward with that? I don't know if that answers it. Kind of a generic thing there, Kevin, but I think that we need to continue these conversations.
And the Synod-wide area gatherings in May is going to have this focus, stewardship and money and that sort of thing. So we'll continue that conversation. And the Resource Generation Task Force has been part of that planning, let's put it that way, and see what comes out, because I think the conversation is important. In terms of my doctoral research is around this area of talking about money, talking about a money wound, hey? And I think in talking about people's experience with money is important, not just the giving aspect, but also what is the overall relationship with money is a big piece in how they see themselves giving to the church or giving in general. You know?
No, I think that's really important too. It's if you ask people, where did you learn to give? You know, like, I mean, I know yours is going a little different, but where did you learn to give? And I tell the story that when I was growing up, on the dresser in my parents' bedroom, every Sunday morning were 4 quarters. We had 4 kids, 4 quarters. And this was the time when actually going into your parents' bedroom was not really as acceptable as it is today, that you just didn't go in there. That was their private domain and you didn't go in there. Mm-hmm. And yet on Sunday mornings, every child went in there with their envelope, picked up their quarter, and then you knew that the 4 quarters were there. So just the fact that we had to go into this almost sacred place to pick that up and put it in our envelope, and that it was there for us, just has stuck with me to this day. And so those stories of where did you learn to give? And we have a lot of people who no longer have those stories of knowing that giving is an option. And so sharing those stories and learning how people's stories is really important.
And that going into the sacred space to get the money gives you a different kind of relationship with money. Gives it a sense of sacredness as well as not just something that's transactional.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was talked about, right? But I mean, I was one of the lucky ones. I'm not sure that happens in all families. So.
Very good. Any other questions?
You talked about the multiple touch points, and I've known that for a long time. Do you have materials for utilizing that? You know, brochures to put in thank you letters, little blurbs to put in newsletters, items to just continue to say, have you remembered? Who have you remembered in your will? Have you remembered the church in your will, etc.? Do you have anything like that to share?
I would love to say it's all in a perfect form right now, Art, but I'd be lying. So I need to do that. That's my inspiration right there. I have done this and I have things, but I whenever I write a newsletter, I try to put something in, but I have not been good about combining it all into one little place. So I think that that's a real good idea, and I will need to do that. And because I think that would be really helpful to yourself and to congregations to have that as a resource. And it's good to hear. Like I said, I think our way of working with people has changed over the last couple of years, and we are still kind of learning what does that mean. And I think that that's a really good idea to be able to find that. So thank you. I will write that down, and that should be something we should be able to find in the next, I'll say 6 months, you know, have something that's a little bit more formalized. Sorry, but I can't say right now. If I come across something, and I have to say that we are all, those of us who do this, share. And so that, you know, I kind of open like 4 different things. Say, oh, I like that one today, I'm going to use that one, but I haven't taken and kind of combined it all for something.
Well, I've been working for over 3 years, probably even longer, trying to get a planned giving program together for the organization, and it is struggling. I mean, we've done a brochure, etc., but
yeah.
It does take, man, that's the piece. It's a constant reminder. Probably the best thing I've seen lately is, you know, just to you know, have consistently, or actually this person was saying, you know, put it in your byline in your email. Have you included the church in your will? Mm-hmm. Just question. So it hits people, hopefully, if they see that.
So I know we're getting close, but I'm going to mention one other thing. So, and this might be interesting too. So one of the things that ELFEC has invested in this year, there's a national program being put out by CAGP, which is Canadian Association of Gift Planners, called Willpower, WILLPOWER.ca. And I'll try and put that in the chat while I'm talking here. So ELFEC has an actual site on there. But what we're trying to figure out is this program is to increase the number of Canadians that are leaving a gift in their will to increase that by 3% over the next 15 years. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's moving the needle from 5% to 8%. And that like will result in like, I think they say something like billions of dollars of gifts, you know, if only 3%, we get that needle moving a little bit more. You may have seen their ads. They started this past fall, and it, like I said, it's a national program. But one of the reasons we did that was to support synods and the churches. And now I'm trying to figure out how to put that stuff together so that that's again something you can drop into your newsletters or bulletins or on your websites and stuff. So that's another thing we're working on. But I got to make sure I'm not breaking any rules either when I do that, that I know that's ELFEC stuff, to make sure that somehow it comes out as ELFEC's branding as opposed to Faith Lutheran's branding, because it's ELFEC is the one who has the investment in it. And I just need to make sure I'm not. The other part of my life is I do copyright for the church, a lot of copyright. So I'm very concerned about breaking rules around that. So there's my, I put myself in a real big box on that one. I'm pretty careful about copyright stuff. So that's where my two lives overlap a little bit. But yes, I think that's great. I think that's a great idea. And it's good to get the feedback. So knowing that we need a brochure with hints, and I think there's willpower and looking at just next steps with the synod. That's what I'm kind of hearing.
Yep. Sounds good. Well, we're getting about that time. Any other questions for Catherine, or comments, concerns, queries? Nope. Sounds like you covered it all there, Catherine. Excellent. Good. Well, thank you for being part of our discussion today. I appreciated your presentation. Again, very thorough, but also very thoughtful. So thank you for your partnership and thank you for your presence among us.
Thank you so much for being here. Peace to all of you. Brian, I know that you do, I hope that you do know who I am, I think, don't you? The Lemke from the Lemke clan.
Yes,
so.
I've been trying to remember all your siblings' names. I remember Russ,
Yes.
your dad.
Yeah. And so Marla and Ken were the ones who were closer to your age, I think. Marla and Ken.
Right.
Yeah. So
From Calgary days, yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, sorry to interrupt there, but I just couldn't let it go without saying hi to you. So
Yeah, and greetings to Jeff too. And
I will. He's just walking in the door right now. I kicked him out.
and Jordan, is he your son?
Jordan is my son. So
Okay. He pops up too, some now and then on Facebook and all. So.
Yes. So the tradition continues. It's actually, sorry, now we're going to the personal part, but the fifth, got to think here. 5th generation of pastor in the family. So poor kid. So no, it's all good. It's all good. So it's
keep it up.
Good.
That's right.
Good to make that connection. Very good. Okay. And then throw it back to Pastor Prema.
Thank you, Kevin. And thank you again, Catherine, for money is never a very comfortable topic to talk about, and talking about investments and giving in the church, as much as we recognize and depend on it, on the workings of the mission of the churches. It's not always the most comfortable conversations, but thank you so much for presenting in a way where we can relate to the giving as one of our significant ministries, pieces of ministries as well. And not just when we are alive, but something that's ongoing, that we keep that ministry, be a part of that ministry ongoing. I know that we're running short of time and we're right on time. So I just wanted to say, give a brief closing and with a prayer and a blessing. And as we depart and part ways from here, the Lord be with you. The gracious God of all, God whose giving knows no ending. We thank you that you are our God who calls us again to this ministry of giving. God, as you fill our lives with your love and your giving, your blessing in tangible and intangible ways, God bless us. Fulfill in us that call to continue this ministry. As we go forth in teaching and in leading, bless us. And in our giving, and in our planning to give. May it be praised, all for your glory. May those praises reach to you, O God, as this ministry strengthens and grows even past us. Bless us, hold us as we part ways from here. In Christ's holy and blessed name we pray. Amen. Thank you again for all for being here and joining in this conversation. May this just be one of those stops, as Catherine mentioned, that it might multiply in conversation. And God give us the courage and the wisdom, the words and the strength to have those ongoing conversations. Thank you again, and God be with you.